A common question that comes up from vets that are in the VA claims process is who can write a Nexus letter? Do I need a Nexus letter? You know, how much is a Nexus letter? And these are all really great questions. And that's what this video is about. I'm going to try and clear up some things based on my experience in this process that I think might help you by, number one, giving you a little bit more information than what you might already know, and maybe saving you some money by kind of showing you ways that you can get a Nexus letter or at least a Nexus statement from your own doctor, for whatever it is that your doctor charges, probably, a copay. But before I do that, let's look at what the 38 CFR says, and it's in section 3.159. So if you want to read this, this pretty much explains what type of evidence the VA is looking for in terms of Nexus or, Nexus letters. It's a person who is qualified through education, training, or experience to offer medical diagnoses, statements, or opinions. And I'll stop there. So basically, and I think this answers the question that a lot of us have, is a nurse practitioner qualified to write a Nexus letter? Or is a PA qualified to write a Nexus letter? Or is a chiropractor qualified to write a Nexus statement? And I think that based on what it's saying here, that yes, those people are qualified because they have the education, they have the training, they have the experience to offer that. And I would hope that anyone that you ask to help you with this wouldn't do it unless they felt like they were qualified through their education, training, or experience. It also goes on to talk about medical journals, records, articles, and then of course it says IMOs, which are independent medical opinions, and Nexus letters, etc. So, with that being said, these are things that the VA accepts as evidence. That it's not saying that it will, that it will address or win your claim, but it does say that they accept them and that this is what they're looking for. So I think that hopefully will clear that up for you. Now, what is a Nexus letter? And before I start defining this, I'm just going to say that, a Nexus statement or a Nexus is always needed to win a claim. You need something anchoring your service to your current, diagnosed disability. You don't always need a Nexus letter. And, if you are thinking about paying for one to, submit with your claim, I don't think they're a bad idea, but I don't think every single one needs a Nexus letter or needs a paid Nexus letter. And I think that probably a lot of medical professionals out there that offer these would probably rather you call them independent medical opinions. But, for the sake of the video and the sake of just learning, a Nexus letter is simply just something or a letter that's well articulated, and we'll talk a little bit about what your doctor would want to put in that letter, but it essentially just takes your current diagnosed condition and it explains using science-based facts and evaluations of you, the veteran, to connect it to some sort of event that happened in the military or while you were on active duty, whether it's an injury or some sort of sickness or illness or maybe even an exposure. So think about, even like a noise exposure for hearing loss or even, maybe there's some symptoms that you had while you were in the military and you explain that to your doctor and you show them the symptoms that you reported to your, that are in your service treatment records. And then those symptoms, the doctor eventually says, through, the care, the continuity of care that you've had over the years, the doctor's able to backtrack that and articulate it in a nice laid out letter with all of the facts to explain why their opinion says that there's a nexus from something happening in the military or, reported symptoms from the military to today's current diagnosed condition. And just real quick, if you're looking for an increase to increase a current condition that you're already service connected to, these are not going to typically be called Nexus Letters because you're already service connected. So essentially, you would need an independent medical opinion for that. And these can be very beneficial for those of you who are having a hard time increasing something from, maybe a lower rating to get something to an increased rating. I just wanted to clear that up. But also, these things cost money. So independent medical opinions cost money. You can use your own professional or your own personal doctor for that. And you can also write really well articulated statements for conditions that would make more sense to explain your symptoms. So what are the benefits of getting a Nexus letter for free from your doctor? Well, first of all, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that going to your own personal doctor is the best way to do this every single time, because, sometimes our doctor isn't going to want to help us, not help us, but they're not going to want to have, that additional burden. They don't know what it is that you're asking for. They don't know what it is that they need to do. And they just, quite honestly, don't understand it. But if you can get your doctor educated on what you're looking for and give them an understanding so that they feel comfortable doing it, having your doctor write a Nexus letter for you for free is just an outstanding way to do this. Other reasons why it would be beneficial for you is that your doctor already knows you from your visits, probably already understands your condition. They can relate more to what you're dealing with, and they might be able to articulate it very well. And they already have your medical history. Now, obviously, with that being said, there will be some things that you're going to need to explain to your doctor, because if your doctor doesn't understand what it is that you're trying to do, they won't really understand how to really formulate the opinion that they have. And I do understand that this can be very challenging to ask your doctor for something that probably isn't asked of them very often. You might find that some doctors might actually understand what it is that you're doing. They may have already done this. And at the end of the day, it doesn't hurt to ask your doctor for their professional opinion on whether or not the issue that you're dealing with is connected to your military service or not. But if you do decide to do that, and I know from experience that it's challenging oftentimes to ask your doctor to help you, and it's challenging to make sure that your doctor understands what you want them to put in, and it can be a huge waste of time to just simply ask your doctor, hey, is it possible that this condition is connected to my military service? Because they might say, yeah, I can see how it is. But if they don't understand like what the VA is looking for, it might just still get denied. And I have had that experience where I did have a doctor who was willing to help me and did listen to what I had to say. But I didn't understand what exactly should go in those letters or those statements. And so I have been the victim of a denial, even with my own personal doctor connecting it to service. I just didn't understand what needed to go in there, and neither did my doctor. But I want to explain some things that I learned in that process, because I've also had a letter written by my doctor that was successful. So the way that I would suggest, in the way that I've broached this in the past, is just simply asking your doctor for their opinion. We all have our own conditions that we're dealing with. And, if you're watching this video, you've probably already thought to yourself, I bet you that this condition that I'm dealing with was connected to something that happened to me in the military. And if you're watching this video, you're probably already there. The thing that you're missing is you don't know the answer because you're not a medical professional. And so what we do is we go online and we Google it, and we try to, back up our theories with, facts from medical studies or even forums where other veterans have talked about it and talked about, it working for them. But wouldn't it be nice if you had your own private doctor that could say, yeah, you're on the right track, or no, you're not. Like, that's not possible. And that's what I think is important about a doctor relationship, or a relationship with our doctor, is we are there to get treated. And if we can ask them for their opinion on whether or not this is connected, and giving them an idea of why we think it might be, and then explaining to them, what happened while we were in the military, and what, why they, why we think the way that we think, they might be able to give you a better idea. And remember, they're the ones that have the education, training, and experience. They're the ones that are certified as doctors. And that's what the VA wants. They want that evidence from these medical professionals. I mean, think about it this way. You're going to go to a CMP examiner who's going to spend 10 to 15, maybe 30 minutes with you going over a DBQ, and then making an assessment or an evaluation of you and deciding whether or not they think something's service connected. And oftentimes, those are probably going to be denied if it's not readily available, or if it's not like right in front of them. And so with your doctor, they already know all of your background, and you have more time with them, and there's a relationship there, so it might be a little bit easier. But if you get your doctor to do this, and your doctor agrees and understands, they want to be able to make sure that they can, determine whether or not they think that it's a service connection, and, be able to back that up with facts. They want to be able to articulate, that you currently have this disability, this diagnosed condition, and, they've reviewed your medical records. They've interviewed you about your previous, experiences in active duty, or whatever injury or whatever it is that they're connecting it to, and they're going to back it up with facts. You also want them to understand that the VA wants you to quantify the connection. So if if your doctor thinks, hey, it's actually likely, it's possible, the VA is not going to understand what your doctor's trying to explain. So the VA uses different standards of proof. One of them being the one, the regular standard is as at least as likely as not. And if a doctor can articulate that your current condition is at least as likely as not connected to something that happened in the military, an injury, an exposure, whatever it is, then the VA will be more prone to approving you based on that evidence. If they, other ones might be more likely than not, which obviously is above and beyond what the VA asks for in regards to standard of proof. And then, of course, there's less likely than not, which would not put you over the top. The VA wants to see a 50-50 chance that this condition that you're dealing with happened because of military service, active duty service. So your doctor needs to know that. Because it would be very easy for a veteran just to ask the doctor, hey, what are the chances here? And the doctor's saying, yeah, it's possible, and writing it up that way. But if they don't explain, if they don't help quantify it in that letter, the VA won't know if this is just something that could be possible or something that is at least as likely as not. So that's also very very helpful. And I explain this to my doctor by just saying, hey, they want to put a number on it. Is it at least 50% chance that it happened? Or is it greater than 50%? Or is it less than 50%? And I think that'll help your medical professional, whoever's helping you with this, whoever's evaluating you for this. I think that'll help them kind of figure out what it is they need to write. They need to, be able to articulate that. And then, of course, like going a step above that, because in a Nexus letter, the way I look at this is probably really wrong. But initially, if we're going for a Nexus letter, we really just want to connect that current diagnosed disability to service. And then, like, once we get that standard and we got the green light and we won, then we won service connection, which is great. But if your doctor and you in your own personal statement, if you forget to explain the severity, then you might get service connected, but you might be a 0% when you rate 30 or 50. And that's sad, because now you have to go through the whole process again. You don't have to prove service connection all over, but you need to be able to, but you're going to have to, waste time, and it could be months, right? So you want to make sure that if your doctor's going to write this, you should consider talking to your doctor about the criteria in 38 CFR. I don't know how many times I would look at something in the 38 CFR, a condition, and I would read through each rating criteria, 10%, 30%, 50%. And I would say to myself, man, like there's something in here I just don't understand, like what it means. What is purulent discharge coming from sinusitis? And I'll Google it, but I don't understand it, right? Like, it's something that you need to see on imaging or whatever. And this is a great opportunity for you to ask your doctor, hey, based on the images that you've seen in my MRI or a CAT scan or an X-ray or records that you have, could your doctor help you understand that criteria better? And then that way they can also write in your letter to help articulate where they think you are in terms of rating percentages. So use that opportunity to ask questions so that you understand it and so that your doctor understands that you also need that information. And of course, you're going to write your own personal statement that will help with getting the right rating. Okay, so what makes a letter strong? We've kind of talked about a lot of this stuff, but obviously if you get your personal doctor to evaluate you and they're going to write a letter for you, you want to make sure they put their title and their status and you want to be able to answer that question. Qualified to make the connection? Yes. Here's why. This is the medical doctor, this is a PA, whatever it is. They want to be able to put that information in there. Now, listen, I know that not all of these in here are going to be possible. You're asking your doctor for a favor and they're going above and beyond to help you. So some of this stuff you may not get in, but if you just put these notes in the back of your head and your doctor says, hey, what do you need in there? These are a good thing. Reviewed medical records. I would say that, you want them to at least look at medical records that are related to whatever it is that you're claiming. So if you had, sinusitis and you weren't diagnosed till way, way, way after service, but you went to the doctor a lot while you were in the military and you complained about, sinus infections or whatever it is, or some symptoms, but you were never properly diagnosed, you would want to, explain that you had these records, and you might want to show them so that they can draw back to that and use that as the anchor point. You want to make sure that, and we've already talked about this, but you want to make sure that it's very important that if they think that your condition is connected to military service, they want to talk about the type of activity or the exposure or that in-service event that they're going to connect this to, that they think caused this, to the standard of at least it likely is not. And they want to articulate that connection. And they want to be able to do that using medical reasoning. And hopefully they'll understand that with just a little bit of explaining, because it seems like it should be a really easy concept for them to grasp once you kind of articulate it to them. And then, of course, use the VA language, at least as likely as not, more than likely, or more likely than not, or less likely than not. And lastly, if they could discuss some of the symptoms that you have, some of the imaging things that they've shown, I think that'll also be helpful. I'll give you a quick personal story. I was seeing a doctor for the longest time, and they wrote in a bunch of jargon in there that I did not understand. And eventually I just had to go talk to the doctor about it and just say, hey, where does this fit in this criteria? And they had to explain it to me. And I think I ended up having to have them articulate it in different language because either I wasn't doing it right or the VA wasn't reading it right. And I think that's very easy to get confused. But, I think that's important too, especially when doctors are using handwritten notes, because half the time you can't read them and understand what they're saying. And unless you're able to pull that out, they want to do that. So I think that's true too. In your medical notes, they're not writing your medical notes to help you get the right rating. That's not their job. They're writing their medical notes just to document things. And so, showing them the criteria could be very helpful in your cause. So if your doctor is not going to be able to help you, they just don't feel comfortable, or you just don't feel comfortable asking them, one thing you can do is call around a local specialist to see if they're willing to help. You might get lucky. You probably will get the runaround. But that's okay. I mean, it's all worth it, right? Like you're trying to navigate a very complicated process, and you need a local specialist to help give you an independent medical opinion. And I think some of them might actually say, "Yeah, and you know what? I understand what you need. I'll help you out." Another option that you could be successful with, and I know that a lot of people have a hard time with your VSO, but there's VSOs out there that are very linked in, and they might have a local doctor that's willing to help vets out. They may charge you, the doctor may charge you, or they may not. I mean, they're going to want something, right, for their time, but it might be an easy way to get somebody local that can evaluate you and help you with that process. Other ways to do this is, there are doctors that advertise writing Nexus letters and independent medical opinions all over the internet. You can Google it. Facebook groups have tons of doctors in there that advertise this. YouTube, obviously, there's plenty of doctors out there that know what they're, or at least they claim to know what they're doing. I'm guessing they do. Those are all good options as well. I like the Facebook groups because there's a lot of doctors in there that will write them. I'd like to caution you against staying away from like the mills. I think you'll probably get better service finding a doctor that you like online, and someone that seems to have the expertise in what you're trying to do. I think those are great ways to figuring out whether or not this is what you need to do if your own doctor can't help you out. That's it. If this video was helpful to you in any way, please hit the subscribe button. Please like the video. Feel free to comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you might have. Also, check out my website, informedveteran.com, where I put down a lot of information that I've learned from this process over the years, and hopefully it will help you as well.